right. Happy Tuesday to you, Coach Robbie.
Happy Tuesday. It's December 13th, the year, for now, 2022. Welcome aboard, everybody. You're listening to the Crushing Iron podcast, and this is episode 641.
Yeah, it is. 641.
You got your Santa cap on today?
Not yet, man.
No?
No.
You're waiting until the last minute?
I'm going to wait for a minute, yeah.
Yeah, I've got a red Solo cup with lemon flavored water in it right now. That's the closest that I got to Christmas spirit today. Nothing wrong with it. It's just, a secondary holiday behind Thanksgiving. Want to say a big welcome to everyone tuning in. Hope you're getting ready for what is honestly a really fun, great time of year, if you like it, at least, with family and friends. A little bit of time off from work.
If you like it.
A little bit of time off. A little bit of time off from training. Before we do the intro, I do want to say this, on Facebook the other day, you get all these comments about, ugly sweater this and ugly sweater, parties. And the first thought that came to my head was, why can't you just call it a sweater party? Because I don't know that I've ever seen a not ugly sweater.
Oh, I mean, yeah, you're not a sweater guy, dude.
No, nobody should be a sweater person. I'm just saying, females, different story. You guys rock it differently. But for dudes, if you're not Mr. Rogers, you don't need a sweater. I'm just saying, or if you don't go to Yale and you're a fraternity, you don't need a sweater. That's all I'm saying. Sweaters, pleated khakis, loafers. I know I'm offending a lot of CPAs right now, but it's just not necessary. It just really isn't necessary. So
Bobby Knight.
Yeah, Bobby. Well, I mean, different era. Okay, different era.
But I'm not even going to say he wore it well.
No, he didn't wear it well. That's the thing. He didn't wear it well, but I can tell you right now, in the year we live in, 2022, you're not going to see anybody with a sweater throwing a folding chair across a basketball court. Okay, you're just not. It's just that ship sailed a long time ago. So yeah, just call it a sweater party. This is our party. You're invited to it. It's your first time tuning in. Welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have quite a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe, and just podcasts in general. Time is very valuable, so we appreciate you tuning in today. We cover it all. We do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We do race recaps and also a lot of race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through in life in general, not just as coaches and athletes, but as human beings ourselves. We also talk a lot about what our own athletes are going through. We talk frequently about what the obstacles they're going through and also their triumphs. We work with a wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner-level triathletes looking at their very first sprint or 5K, all the way up through elite level amateurs trying to get back to world championships, and everyone in between from all over the world. And again, I think it's important to highlight that we are not a triathlon coaching company. We are an endurance sports coaching company. We all work with runners, cyclists, swimmers. They have no interest in triathlon, but a lot of triathletes. So athletes in general. And we'll use the feedback loop we have in them in training peaks, emails, text messages, and the like to drive the discussion of the day. We also utilize our Facebook group. You can search that, Crushing Iron Group, and answer one simple question. We'll let you right in. Amazing community and a fantastic resource, regardless of your experience and goals in the sport of triathlon or endurance sports in general. Great people in there, oftentimes willing to share their advice, and hopefully they avoid some of the pitfalls we've all made in our journey to where we are right now. And we'll do Q&As around once a month. Maybe we'll do that next week. Burning questions for 2023. I can feel it now. Because I don't think we did one last month. That's it. We don't do sponsors. We don't do ads. So stop emailing us. But we do have one agenda, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Yeah, little known fact about Bobby Knight. He was signed at Wisconsin, or not signed maybe, but he agreed to coach at Wisconsin before Indiana.
Really?
He was at Army. He had interviewed, and they had all but locked it all up, and he was flying back to Army, and they released it to the press, and it pissed him off, and then he went to Indiana.
Seems very Bobby Knight-ish.
Yeah, I actually kind of like it. And then we ended up later with Dick Bennett, who wears the sweater vest very nicely.
Does he?
He did.
I was going to say, I don't know. Again, one of those things where I don't know that anyone wears a sweater vest greatly, and that's in the same family of the turtleneck. I don't know anyone that rocks a turtleneck well. At least for dudes. I'm obviously, it hasn't been compared. I'm not a sweater person, but turtlenecks in general, and scarves. You know, like I shave my neck for a reason. Like why do I want to add, you know, fibrous strings that are rough around my neck to just make me itch and break out in hives? Like I don't see the point. And another thing, does your neck really get that cold? I mean, honestly, does it really? If you're like walking through like, you know, a Christmas party and you got your sweater vest on and you're like, honey, my neck is chilly. I really should have worn the turtleneck today. I can't believe you talked me out of it. My neck, my Adam's apple is freezing. Can we please go? No one's neck ever gets fucking cold. Okay. So there's really no reason. I don't assume anymore. Is there any reason for a turtleneck? Do you own a turtleneck? I feel like you may. I feel like you do.
No, I don't at the moment.
No?
I had one, but you know what? You know, I think it. You know, you're talking about parties. It doesn't get cold in there for a turtleneck, but I think it must get cold in history classes because every history professor I ever had a turtleneck, and they kind of. I think they're about the only people that can pull it off. To be honest,
they can 100%. The same guy, Dr. Haygood, history class. He wore the sweater. He wore a sweater vest, but he was also absolutely jacked. Okay, he wore like this incredibly stark. Yeah, I swear to God.
History teacher?
Yes, history teacher, Dr. Haygood. He had these glasses on, and he had, I mean, he was absolutely ripped. Gigantic arms, obviously like super tiny legs, but jacked arms. He wore a white button-down, extra starch. Like if he had like taken off his body, he could have stood it up on top of a desk and it would have stood up straight. And then he always rocked, you know, really high, really high, you know, high and tight Windsor knot with a sweater vest. But I generally think it was because he couldn't find a sweater that could fit his guns in it. So he's like, I got to wear a sweater vest, obviously, because I can't fit these, you know, these pythons in here. But yeah, that's Dr. Hagen, my history teacher.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating, which I'm sure if you're out listening and you're like, this is a great triathlon podcast talking about turtlenecks, Christmas parties. You might have a turtleneck on right now. And you're like, I'm never listening to you guys anymore. Listen, we've all got opinions. We've all got feelings, and they're all valid. And speaking of feelings, I think it's where we're heading today.
Get out of your feelings.
What's that?
Get out of your feelings. No, I'm kidding.
Get out of your feelings. Nah, feelings are important, man. Everyone has feelings.
We had that podcast before.
Most people don't deal with them, but you should. But we're on the same page. You know, I asked you about pre-show after our I think we PR'd that pre-show meeting. You know, I wanted to talk. We're coming into the new year, and you get a lot of questions, and we have our athletes are filling out their 2023 race form and what they want to do and what they want to achieve and how they want to feel this year. And, you know, and again, like we've covered this, I think, extensively in a variety of ways in the last 2 months, you know, starting the first week of November, you know, it's not just about planning for races, it's about other things that you do in life, time management, boundaries, you know, your belief system. And I think that's kind of the one I wanted to kind of harp on today, because I think it's really understated as adults, right? That what our you know, how important self-belief is. And then the question is why do we believe certain things? You know, and you were kind of pretty much on the same page, I think, with, you know, you said that you're kind of, I got a feeling you were a little bit agitated as of late that you haven't achieved certain things.
Me? Yeah. I just keep, I don't know if it's because of the winter coming in or, you know, like you get in your kind of head a little bit, but, you know, I've just been thinking back lately about, you know, my last couple, really, I've only done 2 races in the last 2 years and they've both been Ironman and, but the results weren't what I wanted necessarily, for various reasons, but I was doing a lot of thinking about it. And you know what I realized is that, I've done, I guess, 9 Ironman in the last 9 or 10 years. And I think the hardest I've ever trained for one was my first. And then after that, I think it was my third. And
that would be Chattanooga.
Yep. And I was like, what the hell is that? You know, just going through the motions, you know, and I really did come up with a thought about it. And a lot of it was because you were talking about, you know, rebuilding a lot of workouts and doing these things and progressions and how important that is in training. And I was thinking back to my analogy. I know I do this a lot because I started playing drums at one point and I started working, but I was a late onset drummer type thing. And I started playing, but I got obsessed with these rudiments and paradiddles and things. And those are just basically drills, you know, to kind of learn how to move your body and things like that. And with efficiency and all that kind of thing. And I got pretty good at that kind of stuff, but I wasn't ever fluid. I was always like tense as a drummer, you know. And there's some guys that are just out there, you know, and girls that are just super fluid behind the kit. It's almost like they don't even need to practice those things. They can just do it. And because they can hear it and they can react and they can do it and they're not holding back or stressed about it. And I think a lot of times I sort of get into that category with my training is like, I feel really, you know, comfortable on a bike at all times and I'm really fluid with that stuff. And I've always played sports and stuff, but I don't work the rudiments of triathlon. And it's sort of like you have to have both sides, right? You have to, you know, I talk to that's why I talk to athletes a lot about, you just got to relax and you got to flow out there. You've done the work, you know, and then for whatever reason, you talk about like trainers and gamers. And I think it's the same sort of conversation. A lot of people train really well. They hit their numbers and everything like that. But when they get into the, you know, the race element, when it's not all laid out and it's going to be different, it's going to be weird and you got to adjust. And it's sort of like, you know, flowing with the jam session, you know, certain people can play the song perfectly, but if you get off the script a little bit, a drummer might get a little confused and not be as good or whatever. So it's the same type of thing. But anyway, I just don't think I've been putting in enough work on the mechanics and on the chops and on the fundamentals and really, you know, working on building up and doing the right things. So, but it's all kind of had a crescendo in the way of, I'm feeling kind of down about it, you know, not down, but like you know, sort of like a look in the mirror moment for me. And, you know, it's kind of like I'll see if I can pull up this quote I had later because it fits really good, but I've been kind of thinking about it in this way, especially with the winter coming around, you know?
You know, it's, yeah, I want to touch on a few things you said there and then ask you a question. But before I say that, I always think it's fascinating to kind of do an internal audit, right, of our belief system, not of like what we believe in the world, right? Not what we believe to be right, not what our religion or political affiliation is, or, you know, the hierarchy of where things are in the world, but of what we believe of ourselves. And is it in fact true? And if we do believe it's true, is it only true because we've always told ourselves that? Right? Like, you know, I always go back to, and I have this conversation with my mom all the time, that, you know, everyone has, and we're not going to talk about religion and politics, but I will say that I always think it's fascinating that political and religious belief systems are passed down, right, from your family. Like, you know, if you're a Democrat or Republican, or, you know, or you're Baptist or you're Church of Christ, the likelihood of your parents being those are insanely high, and the likelihood that their parents were that insanely high, and so on and so on and so on. So for a lot of people, we fail to, and I think we get lazy, right? And this is being highlighted in the last few years. It's like we fail to challenge ourselves in our belief system instead of just accepting it. And that goes with all things, right? Like, do I just believe in this, you know, political agenda because my great granddad decided to be a Republican or Democrat, right? Or because 300 years ago, my grandmother, you know, forced my dad to go to a Methodist church and now we're all Methodist, you know, and you don't question anything, right? And that all comes from where? Like, you know, it's funny because I had this exact thought the other day when Hayden, we were watching football, and I swear he's going to be a coach. He won't be probably triathlon coach, but he has been on the weekends. He'll go down in the basement and he'll be like, "Can I go to the basement and watch TV?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude, it's the weekend. Do whatever you want." And I'll go down there and he's watching football reruns on Hulu, just of games that already happened. I'm like, dude, he's like, "Dude, I'm watching LSU Georgia." I'm like, "Dude, unreal." Anyway, he said, just kind of like out of the way, he said, "I was born to like the Dolphins and I was born to like the Vols."
Oh yeah.
And I said, yeah. And I said, well, that's true, because I was also born to like the Dolphins and like the Vols because my dad was that way. And I said, I've always been a fan, but I also want you to like whoever you want, just not the Patriots, just not Alabama, with a few other, you know, like, you know, in parentheses, like I do have some requirements. But it got me thinking, like, the self-belief system, you know, like I know that I still say things about myself that are untrue. Right. Like, you know, I said, well, you know, I'll make comments sometimes. I'm saying, well, that you do that because I'm not that smart. And that's just a lie, because I am intelligent. I didn't graduate from college. I dropped out, but a lot of these things that I say, and we all do this, right? In training, I can't do it because I'm not consistent, or I'm not fast enough, or I'm not good at hills, or I can't do this. A lot of it is just factually incorrect. It only seems correct because we've told ourselves that, so we avoid it, right? I think everyone has, whether you believe it or not, an infinite amount of ability. I truly believe that. Physically, from the chin down, the human body is so unbelievable, right? And this is something that we really instill up in all of our athletes when they come to work with us. I'm not sure if you want to work with an athlete like me. I'm like, wait a minute, like, everyone is an athlete. Whether you believe it or not, you're an athlete, and you have infinite ability to achieve whatever it is you want to. Same goes with your intelligence, right? We all have, think about how just insanely brilliant and honestly unfathomably, like, ridiculous your brain works and operates, and what your body can do and what you can train it to do. The biggest obstacle and the biggest impediment to achieving any of those things is how you think of yourself, right? If you think you're not consistent, you're not going to be consistent. If you don't think you can do it, you won't do it. If you don't think you can climb hills, you won't, because you'll avoid them. If you don't think you can be faster, you won't, because you won't try hard enough. It's that belief system, right? That we, again, and a lot of it is we carry these thoughts, these feelings, these perceptions of who we see in the mirror from ages 6, 7, 8, 9, and the fact of the matter is they're bullshit, right? They're just not true. But we tell, and again, I think we all do this to tell ourselves that, to kind of like lighten it in like a self-deprecating way. Well, that's just me. I'm and I say it too by myself. Doing me, I'm a the alcoholic college dropout, and I say that because I don't. Do I believe that that's a negative thing for me and where I am now? No, because I'm insanely grateful to be where I am in life today. But I've said it so much, and at one point I think I believed it, that I kind of lightened the load by saying it, but it's still self-deprecating. Right? Who cares if I'm a college dropout? Who cares if I'm in recovery? I get, I have a job and a life and a business that most people would kill to have. So what's the point in even saying it? So I think we all say that, right? And that's a crossover from I can't lose weight, right? Or I can't build muscle, or I can't eat right for a long period of time. You obviously can't do what you say you can't do. And I think that's a huge issue with people in general and how it affects you with training and in racing, that you can't. The best thing you can say is, I can, right? And I will. And if you fall short, you fall short. But it's the things that we prevent ourselves from doing. And the question I wanted to ask you is, listening to you talk about that is I think oftentimes we get more frustrated with our inaction and how we got there, and then our belief in what leads us to not acting on certain things than the actual action itself, right? And I would say you've always, since I've known you, you've always joked about being a procrastinator, right? You tell the stories about, baseball or college, or I was always this, and it's kind of natural. And I think we say, and I say some things about myself, and then we turn to believe it, and then we actually live it, right? Not because we necessarily want to, but it's the story we've always told us, that even if an action never happened, right? But some teacher or some friend or some whatever told you one thing in life, right? And it just stuck with you, and you've always believed that narrative because you hung on to it with dear life, and then you made it true, right? Because people say things about us all the time. We say things about ourselves, all the time in our head that aren't true, but we hang on to it like it's set in stone. And so, that's what I was kind of asking you is like, are you more, you say you're frustrated or, not to me just disappointed, but whatever the feeling is you're having about not achieving this or not achieving that, do you feel like some of it is also frustration with choosing to believe that, I'm not this guy that can, I can't train year round. I can't train, for 2020. I kind of just got to put my nail against stone, because that's never the way to get to where you want to go fully. Does that play any role in that whatsoever?
Oh, I think you're onto something there. Definitely. I was listening to a Goggins interview. He's got his new book out, you know, and one of the things they were talking about, I mean, he's so hard, but it just kind of makes me laugh a lot. But there's always kernels of truth in the shit he says. It's like they were talking about, he said, people always ask him, you know, what are you training for? And he goes, what do you mean? And he's like, well, you got a race coming up? He goes, I never trained for anything. I'm just always ready for everything. He said, you know, we've talked about that a lot too with, you know, putting races on the calendar. And that always seems to be my fuel. And what he said really resonated with me because he goes, I'm always ready to do whatever people put the challenge up. And I always, cause you never know when you're going to need to have to be ready. Right. So, and he always like puts it back into like life or, you know, if somebody's going to come up and try and fight you or whatever, you know, but I think about that and that, yeah. Okay. So I talk about being a procrastinator and then I don't study until the final exam or whatever. And I do well, but it's sort of like, it's always been that thing with me in a way where I tend to put myself in a corner and then just and then prove it, you know, I can do it still, you know, but yeah. So there'll be short stretches of that. And then, I know what the other thing was, is sort of like, you can't have a race dictating where you're going because there's always this thing after a race that you're done, at least temporarily. And that's not the case. You know, it's like no matter what it is, a 5K, 10K, you're training for, it's your big deal or whatever, Ironman. And then when you get done, you're like, okay, I did it, you know, but that shouldn't be the point. And I think that's where I have to really think about wrapping my head around is this idea of just doing it for the progress or doing it because it's the best thing and just being consistent with it. So it just becomes part of the life. And you always talk about our best athletes are doing it just because it's what they do. They just train every day. You know, they don't think about races all the time. They just show up and get out there and that's just part of their lives. And that's really what my thing is. And a lot of times, honestly, it starts with and ends with like going to bed early a lot of times because sometimes I get in a groove where I'm going to bed fairly early, get up, and then the things kind of come together. If I stay up late and then I'm behind the 8 ball, shit, I got to go train, but I got to do this first, and then things get out of whack. So it's about rhythms and patterns. But I totally agree with what you're saying. I think you can talk yourself into believing, you know, like I wouldn't say I'm like 100% procrastinator because I've showed up for a 641 podcast. You know what I mean? Like there's things that I'm very dependable on. But I need to I need to just build more systems into my habits and things like that and not believe one side over the other, but just kind of, I think you can kind of shift your thinking patterns into being more of one person than the other. And then the other one will slowly fade away, maybe.
You know, I love what you said there about the podcast piece, right? It's like, you know, people say, I can't be consistent or procrastinator. I don't like to be organized. I don't like structure, but yet, you know, I've made 2 podcasts a week, you know, organized for the last 6 years, you know,
right.
And I think one of the most underestimated pieces of action that we can add to our life in training and just like how we live day to day is to contradict what we believe about ourselves to see if they're actually true, right? Like if we want to change, like I sent an email to, you know, an athlete the other day, you know, about their year and they're already stressed, you know, and I just said, listen, I said, there are literally only 3 things you need to worry about this coming year. 1 is time management. Make a plan, stick to it, and get it done. Number 2, seize the moment. If you have an opening, take the opening. And then I said, number 3, if you do 1 and 2, consistency will happen. Those are the only 3 things you have to focus on, because this is the same athlete always says, I don't have enough time today, or I was too busy, or I didn't do this, but I really want to be consistent. I'm like, well, that's an action and a choice.
Right.
Right. And I often find the same thing with people that say I'm too busy, you know, but then you look and you do like an audit of how you spent your day, and you're like, am I really too busy, or am I just really, really bad at using, you know, my time wisely, you know, and how much time do I waste a day? You know, what is actually true? Like that was 6 years ago when we lived here before. It was fortunate enough to go on a run with Matt Fitzgerald, the guy that does, 80/20 and has written a bunch of books,
I got you. I got you.
Who has, written a bunch of books. And he was interviewing me for a very, very small piece. And one of them is sharing my story. And he asked me if I had, read this. And I said, no, I don't have a lot of time. He said, well, that's not true. You just didn't make the time. And I said, you're 100% right. I said, I just didn't make time. And so it's interesting how we make excuses about things. And if we want to change our habits and we want to change what we see and what we really believe and challenge, if it's even true, then we have to step out of our comfort zone and either try to create a new habit to reinforce, right? Maybe I was right. Maybe this isn't for me, right? Or that's not really true, right? Like, I keep saying that and it affects me negatively in certain areas. I'm a procrastinator, so I wait till the last minute. So what do you do from here on out? You always wait till the last minute, right? So it's we are our own self-fulfilling prophecy. Like we are what we believe, and one of the things that, as we transition to a new year and we're focusing on different things, like, because it's always interesting how much of our life is impacted by just the simple choices that we make, right? And how much power we have as people and how much power we have as coaches and how much power we have as athletes, and that's, always a question that you and I get from incoming athletes, when they ask about, internal motivation or, what do you need from a coach? And it's like, I need motivation. I'm out. I'm out.
Yeah.
It's because the problem I have with that and the problem that I have with, the need to have a rah-rah coach or to extra motivation is that you should be sufficient and supportive enough of yourself and motivated and driven because it makes you a better person, not because you need someone to do it. I don't want someone to pay me to be their cheerleader. I want them to hire us as coaches to help mold them into the person that doesn't need us anymore down the road, but they see the value in it. The athlete-coach relationship shouldn't be athlete-dependent. You should grow the athlete to a point to where they are self-sufficient. They have grown to become a different version of themselves. They have become more motivated. You have challenged them in ways to do things, and that's one of the things, like a sneak peek. One of the things I'm going to say in our big team Zoom call tomorrow is, and it'll be in our onboarding guide for incoming athletes, is that as a coach, it's my job to set up the training for you, but it's your choice whether to train through it or to exercise through it. And that comes down to consistency, because a coach can lay out a 2 to 3 week, 4 week block, or even shorter, of what the ideal situation is to maximize your success and increase your chances of having the best performance down the road. And if you're able to do 70 to 75% of it and higher, I consider that training, right? So you're not perfect, right? No one's asking you to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're asking, but the difference is then you have people that see the training but only do 20% of it. That's exercising, right? And that's not the coach's responsibility. It's the athletes, right? To try to find the time, and if not, communicate that they need less, right? To find a better way. It's how you work together, but there also should be an expectation of how we can work together best is by me doing the work and then you doing the work as well. And that's not a dictatorship. It's a partnership, because you expect from me and I expect from you. The coach-athlete relationship is not one where, one works for the other. As you work together, right? And then it's you challenging the person to do things or to, to contradict their way of thinking and to make them and to challenge themselves, not just because that's one of the things that I see, as we develop athletes, of all ages and all abilities and all, in all different goals, is we have to make people think now, because everything is so easy. And so a lot of times, and it's like the ask question, I'm not answering that. I'm not answering it. You can figure it out. And it's not to make them feel bad. It's because you thinking about it makes you better. And you learning about things and feeling empowered and more knowledgeable and more confident also makes you a better athlete, because you see things differently. You feel things differently. It makes the program, is different. And it's a great thing, right? And so when you challenge people to contradict what they think, or I don't really know the answer to this. Do you not? or you're either scared to be wrong, which again is a huge fear people have, right? I'm scared to be wrong, and scared to publicly show it, or you aren't willing to think about it long enough. Well, both are not really great traits. Like, it's, you got to think, right? Because then just the thought process alone, right, triggers other thoughts and feelings and maybe even other questions that make you learn more and make you, and see things differently that make you better overall. Like, and it's not like we're all kids, but sometimes I say it a lot of times to Hayden. He's like, "What's today?" I'm like, "I'm not answering that. I'm not answering it." Like, you can think, you just didn't want to think hard enough to answer it. And it's not because, again, like it's a flip, right, between how a lot of people, I think, consider coaches that just give you all the answers and make you not think and make you not. But no, it's our job to challenge you, right? Because you should become this self-supportive machine that really just needs us to help you, guide the way, maybe help you steer a little bit. We're sitting in the passenger seat, you're in the driver's seat, a little bit here, a little bit here, right? Maybe go this way, maybe go that way. And frankly, a lot of coaches are scared to do that because they're afraid their athletes will know so much that they'll end up leaving.
Right.
Right. Like, when we first started doing Zoom calls, that was a question that someone asked me. He's like, "Aren't you worried you're going to lose athletes? Like, because you're going to teach them and empower them so much that they won't need you anymore?" I'm like, no. Like, if anything, like a more a more educated athlete is more bought in. And if you're more bought in, you're going to stick to the process more. If you stick to the process more, you get better results. And that's not really bad advertising. That's just empowering people. Mm-hmm. Right. But to me, it all goes back to, again, challenging people that want to avoid certain races or avoid certain terrain. I don't do, perfect example. We talk about it at run camp, like the old, my ankles are too weak for trails.
Right.
Right. Like, it's a perfect example of like that belief. It's like, well, do you really know that? You've never ran trails. You just said your ankles are weak, and they're probably weak because all you do is run the treadmill and you haven't done any other exercise or run trails. You are what you believe. And I think, again, when you've got this extra time and maybe you're scaling down on your training and your intensity, and then again, you're planning on the goals and you say, "Oh, I can't do that." Like, can I? Like, or am I telling myself that I can't? Because why? And if I am, is it true? Because I really do believe our belief system has to be challenged so often. Because even if we flip the script, right, and we become successful, the easiest place for us to go is kind of right back into, well, I can't do that. Well, maybe, or maybe they were right. Right. You hear that all the time, with athletes. My spouse said this, or my coworker said this. And, I'm scared they're going to be right. Or I'm scared. I'm like, why? First of all, who gives a shit? But two, you are what you believe.
Right.
And again, a belief is a choice, right? It's not just from experience. It's a choice. And experiences don't make things the rest of your life. But choices can fluctuate and change daily, right? Even or weekly or yearly, from what you believe previously to what you believe now.
Right. I love what you said, a lot of things. And when you're talking about Hayden, I just laugh because I know him and what day is it? And it's like, dude, I think that's a microcosm of humanity, though. It's like, how many times a day do we probably do that, in different variations where we know the answer? It's almost like therapy, right? You're laying on the couch, and that's why the therapist will be like, "Well, what do you think?" And it's just like, you have to, and I think that's comes down to what I was talking about, is I need to, sort it out on my own. And a lot of times I'll do that with athletes as well. It's like, they'll ask questions and they know the answer somewhere. It's just a matter of kind of figuring it out. And that, like you're saying, that you got to kind of work through that process, and you really know what's going on inside of you. I found that quote I was going to talk about because I think it's so perfect, because what you said too about you didn't have enough time with Matt Fitzgerald. Mm-hmm. And I think what naturally happens at this time of the year is when it gets dark sooner, and it's so dark all the time, that can be a subconscious trigger to say, well, there's just not enough time in the day anymore, whatever. But this guy, his name is Purity Chad or whatever, it's on Twitter. I saw this quote. He said, "I love..."
Say his name again.
Purity Chad. It's not.
Is this his handle or his legit name?
His handle, I think.
Okay.
He's kind of one of these stoic type guys,
Got it.
And he said, "I love the winter. Everyone else is withering away while I lock in. hoodie on in the gym, building in silence, honed in on leveling up my mind, body, and bank account. Pop out at spring, a completely different man every single time. No distractions. Designated monk mode season.
Designated monk mode season.
I just love that, dude. So the other day I was like, man, that really,
great.
It's like, I just put and it was weird because there's something about the ability to just bring it all in. You know what I mean? And I was looking at that. One of the things I took away was the hoodie part, because I just imagine, it's sort of that Rocky thing or whatever. You put the hood up and you're just kind of in your own zone, right? And you're not worried about anything else. You're just in that moment, really working it. And I went out and did this like hill course that I have here and just did loops and 3 loops of it and had the hoodie on, and it was getting hot, man. And I'm like, so what? It's working. You're getting stronger. You're getting better. Just figure out how to mentally get through that. And I think those are all little things, and I talk about Wim Hof all the time and getting in the ice baths and things like that. Those are little things that you keep doing that are very difficult, and they make all these other little decisions so much easier. And it's just building patterns like that really pay off. And like what you said about, the athlete, you have to do 3 things and put these things in line, and the rest of the shit takes care of itself. It's always, I just think there's something so powerful about going into the moment. And, I love reading when athletes will say, this run was just, I loved every minute of it. They'll say things like that. And to me, that means they were just enjoying the process and not worried about the time or the space or what race was coming or whatever like that. And I think we get caught up in that all the time when we tend to look at numbers, and we're always worried about what's going on. And you should be able to understand innately, I think, that what you're doing is good and it's helping and it's the right thing. And it shouldn't have to always have a concrete number on it. You just know you're moving the right direction. And I love that, how you said that, because if you just keep moving the right direction, every day with simple little things, that'll pay. You'll look back on that and you won't even realize what happened probably half the time, because it's just such a gradual, thing. You don't really notice the changing going on until you notice. And you're like, damn, that makes sense. I mean, it makes sense with everything. If you want to be a writer and you just write every day for 2 hours or something, at the end of the year, you're going to probably be a hell of a lot better writer for many reasons, whether it's grammar or just thought process or creativity or whatever the case may be. It's just a matter of doing it, like the drumming thing. You just drum and work on these things. But if you're working on little things and it's because when you're doing shit that doesn't matter, right? Even in training, it's kind of like, I don't want to say you always have to be on training mode 100%, but like sometimes I'm sure we just, like getting in the pool is a good example. You sit around and talk to people in the lane and go swim a lap and then come back. It's like that shit. But if that's what it takes to get your patterns going, okay. But yeah, it's just so, I guess, fascinating to me to think about really holding in with yourself and really appreciating what you're doing for your mind and your body without external drive. You know what I mean?
It's so interesting, I think. And I think athletes, you hear this all the time. I'm just not good enough, or I'm just not ever going to be that good, or I'm not ever going to be that fast. And you're like, damn right you're not, because you've already decided that. It's like that stuff to me is mind blowing. I can't, and then you won't. It's a choice.
Yeah.
Like I shared this with a few athletes. I came across an article from Trail Runner magazine where they did a study on ultras, like 50 mile to 100, and the impact that of downhill speed had on overall performance and your ability to win the race. And the biggest gain percentage they saw an increase and kind of like the marker of you're going to do really, really well, or how much time, was how fast you run downhill. That was the dictator of if you were going to win the race or not.
Did you read that before camp?
No, I actually read it after, because I was just fascinated by the the thought of it, because it's something I always believed, but didn't necessarily know that was true or not. And the fascinating piece about it was that before people became good or great downhill runners, they believed they already were. So they told themselves, I'm great at downhill, because it is like, if you're downhill trail running, you got rocks, you got roots, you got covered in leaves. You don't know where you're going to step. You don't know what's going to happen. It's like a controlled fall. And with situations like that, you kind of have to blindly just have confidence for no reason.
Right.
Right.
Why not?
Like I'm not a great trail runner. Like, and I don't have like some descending superpower, but I've always told myself I'm a great downhill runner, and I'm not great, but I'm fairly good at it. And it's only because I told myself, and then I've gotten better at it because I've done it. Right. I've ran fast downhill, like on steep inclines with rocks and roots and leaves. You have to jump left and jump right with reckless abandon. But in order to get good at it, I had to tell myself for no reason, yeah, I think I'm good at that. I'm gonna be good at that. And then you do it, and then you become it, and then all it does is validate not your athletic ability, right? Not your special physiological gift, but it just reinforces what you just thought.
Yeah.
And that is so much of life. I'm never going to be a millionaire. I'm never going to have a job I like. I'm never going to be happy. I always struggle in the winter. I can't handle the heat. I can't do hilly courses. I can never figure out my nutrition. I never have good races. Good fucking luck being successful at any of those. But even just blindly, kind of like the old AA quote, fake it till you make it, telling yourself those things, what it does is even if it's not initially true, right? It puts yourselves in such, you have the now confidence to do things in an area of life, whether it's training or racing or a professional life, that you're like, 2 years ago, I would have had no business doing this at all. Right. I remember, when I left the ranch the first time, and I always thought, because I'm not a huge extrovert, right? And I get it. I get feeling from it's like positive feedback from sometimes, but sometimes it also drains me. I'm also an introvert. I'm kind of a both-vert. That's not the technical term, but I just made it up. And I was almost told myself, you'll never be a good public speaker. You'll never. There's too many people, too much pressure. And I went back to the ranch place I got sober at, had recovery, and went back about a year or two later, and I've been back twice to speak to the residents there. And I found it to be the easiest thing I've ever done. But before I went, I told myself, this will be easy. This is comfortable. This is something you can definitely do well. Even though I was terrified and sweating, I was like, I'm super nervous to do this. But then when I got up there, I felt totally comfortable. And then obviously we've done podcasts and other things where I feel totally comfortable speaking in front of the number amount of people. But it's and it's not even a lie. I think it's this honest, vulnerable, authentic belief we should have in ourselves, right? To be able to do things we haven't done before. And going back to what you said about the winter, because I absolutely love that quote, is for whatever reason, when I lived here prior, I was like, that's when I fell in love with the cold. And now I always tell myself, I love running in the cold. Do I? I'm really not sure. But what I do know is that just telling myself that puts me in a situation to where I run in the cold more. And the more you do something, guess what, guys? The better you get at it. I'm terrified of open water. I can't swim well in it, so you never swim in it. There's these little things in life where we have ultimate, even kind of like naive confidence. Mainstream sports analogy, like the Cinderella teams or the real young teams that are in a big tournament, they just don't know better. That's how we should think and feel, right? Like they have no idea they shouldn't be here, right? Or shouldn't, but then that's the thing, because they don't feel pressure, because with pressure comes expectation. With expectation becomes fear of letting things down, which causes you to act and react differently and feel differently versus just having blind, almost like fearlessness to achieve something that you just want in total disregard for what you've always believed or what other people are saying. And that's a choice, right? It's just really interesting how we become what we believe we already are. And we have so much left to do, so much left to achieve, so much more left to, and more mistakes to make us different and wire us different and do different things. It's just really, really fascinating how, again, because it's just one of those things where you have to, well, I just don't have the genetics. And like everybody uses that blame game. Oh, they're just a freak. I'm like, well, most people's freak, it's more freak mentality, right? They made a choice to be an absolute, consistent, accountable, internally motivated, resilient person. And that's why they did this thing. That's why they become like the greatest ones, in my opinion, weren't the greatest athletes. And you see that, you see that all over sports and all professional sports. You look at them, they weren't that great in college, or they were okay in college, or they weren't the tallest or the biggest or the strongest. They just had a relentless work ethic, and most people called them cocky, right?
Yeah.
Tom Brady, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Tiger Woods, all these things. Do they have ability? Sure. We've all got ability, right? And there's a quote like, genetics loads the gun and we pull the trigger. And it's how many times and how much you practice and it's how bad you want it and what you believe. And I think you have to have like a certain level of, not cockiness, right? But just this internal confidence that you're going to do it no matter what. Fuck it. I'm going to make it happen.
Yep.
That's the way to think. And it's unfortunate because that mentality is, I think, looked down upon now because you're seen as cocky or naive, or you think you can have this, or I'm like, well, why can't I?
Right.
Like, why can't I? And I think it's just fascinating about all the things you can buy and read and to improve things. We alone are responsible for improving our own self-belief and the own choices that we make that either concrete what we believe in or contradict the negative beliefs that we have, so we can create new ones.
Yeah. Well, there's this saying with people they say, I like people with confidence but not cocky. I like confidence but not cockiness. And I think that is it, man. I think about, I talk about all the time. It's like, don't think about it and just do it and go with it. It's like jumping in the pool now. I just go there, I put one toe in and then I just jump. That's just how it goes. And you just breathe and relax, and then you get in, you build these habits and everything like that. And on what you're just saying, another thing Goggins said in that interview, it's so funny because the guy's really got some shit going on, but he said, there's a thing I call a talent problem. And he said, when people have talent, they tend not to work at it because it's just come so easy, right? Little things come so easy and they don't work at it. But, if you can get somebody with talent, like I'd love to see a breakdown of 5-star athletes going into college and how they panned out, because a lot of times, you get there and they're just so much better and it comes so much easier that they don't work at it, but these other people below them just start outworking them, and the next thing you know, they overtake it. So your point is so valid. I mean, he's always, like Goggins is always saying, I always tell myself I don't have the talent, so that's why I need to keep working, and I just grind. And that's, like you're saying, man, that's just something that you have to make the decision to do and get to a point where it becomes habit. And I'm not saying it's easy. I struggle with that exact thing a lot of times. Like sometimes I'll be like, oh, we did the run camp. I guess I didn't train that much. We did that big marathon or half marathon. I still got it. It's so dumb, but it's such a natural trait. I think you need to, it's sort of the old, I need to go out and ride or run the marathon before the Ironman just to prove that I can do it. And we talk about that a lot. It's like either you have confidence in what's been going on or you don't. I mean, if you need to go out and prove that, 2 or 3 weeks before the race, then you're probably not in the best spot to be doing the full.
Yeah, no, I love what you said there, and I think it's an important, like, that cockiness or that, like, I got this. Like, I think that is one of those mentalities or levels of confidence that you keep in your you keep in kind of your emergency bag.
Yep, that's good.
It's not something you should rest on, right? It's like resting on your resting your laurels. It's like that's not, you shouldn't hitch your wagon to that horse, right?
Mm-hmm.
It should just be in the very back of the toolbox if things get hairy, if things get nasty, if bad things arise, or if, it should be like a last resort to pull it out of the bag. You don't lead with it, you finish with it. And again, that is the difference in success and failure, is that some people believe that they can just always use it. Some people use that as fuel to the fire, and they use it only in emergencies, or that's what they use to finish. Right? Because there are, negative experiences that we have that, and I think some of the most successful people in the world in every sport, in every, department, or not department, every area of business and professionalism, and have had a negative experience that's driven them. Right? I know I have. You didn't go to college, you won't amount to anything. You can't be successful. You won't be able to provide for your family. It's about time you make something of yourself. When are you going to get a real job? I still think about stuff like that. And a lot of times it's done me very well to the point to where I am now, because now I can laugh about it. But I still go back sometimes and have to kind of like rein myself back in from living there. And I think that's the piece with training and in life, is that it's okay to remember, right? And maybe even walk by the house that you lived in, and that's the experience, right? The negative experience that drove you to be determined and have to do more and to, work hard on anyone because you wanted to show people that they were wrong. And then it's a difference of like, are you here to prove people wrong, or are you here to prove yourself right? So it's okay to walk by that house. It's okay to walk by that experience, right? It's not okay to live there, because then you become it, right? And then you're trapped there. But it's fine to go by every once in a while and look there, but then remind yourself where you are now and that you don't live there. You're just there visiting for a moment. Because I think we all go back to those dark places sometimes that, are kind of give us a quick, swift kick in the pants, again, as an emergency, again, it shouldn't lead the way. It should finish it. And again, that goes back to the belief system and using things as fuel for good, not using, things like, shame and fear and stuff like that as those aren't sustainable drivers that will have a lasting positive impact. It should be used very, 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 very sparingly, and definitely something you shouldn't depend on.
Yeah, I love that, man. We've all had those races where we pulled out the confidence at the end and finished strong. But if you got to pull out that, what you call confidence in your emergency bag too early, that's when you kind of get a wake-up call, That's what happens in Ironman most of the time for me. It's like,
yeah,
feel good only mile 9. Yeah, I got this. I'm going to close it out. And the next thing you know, it's over.
I'm going to close it. Yeah, it's like, bottom of the second, let's pull out the closer.
Yeah.
Let's pull him out. And you're like, wait a minute, he's only got 1 inning in him, or 2 innings in him.
Shit,
and that's the same exact thing. It's like you got to wait. You can't let that be the driver, because that's the same thing with how you approach training, right? Well, I'm going to prove everybody wrong. That's going to last all of 3 weeks until you're like, shit, where's my other motivation? Again, going back to, the coach-athlete relationship. It's not our job to motivate you, because that'll only last for about a week or two. You have to find things that motivate yourself internally that are positive, that get you out the door, that make you want to be better, that make you want to be more consistent. And that stuff gets you faster. And then what's what? You're like, oh, it's possible. I can get faster. So you know what you do? You keep working out. you stay consistent. You keep doing the same things. You know what you do? You get faster again. You're like, oh, see, I can get faster. The age is a mindset thing. Another perfect example. I know I'll never be faster, than I was 6 years ago. Fucking right, you will not with that attitude.
Right.
And it might physiologically be impossible. But why not try? Why not try?
Why not?
Right? Why not try?
Well, because we're afraid.
Well, yeah. I mean, everything goes back to how we're going to hurt our feelings and I don't want to bruise my ego, and it's like such a protected thing. And like most of our egos need a big swift kick in the pants daily, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everyone does, to just bring us back down. And so again, when you're looking at this next year and you're trying to figure out, you're spending all your time on, what trainer to get or what power meter to use, or, how can I perfectly place my Olympic distance, or, this, how many hours I can train, and all these things. And yeah, those are important for 100%. 100%, they're important. But they're not more important than the planning and the competition that's going to go on inside your head from the time you wake up every day to the time you go to bed. Because the person that utilizes those things, right, that plans those races, that trains for those races, the little, again, competition inside your head is the hardest battle you will have all year long. And it happens daily, from the time you wake up, from the time you go to bed. What do you believe? What do you not believe? What are you confident in? What are you not confident in? That's the stuff that'll set you up for success, right? And it's okay to blindly follow something, and it'll listen, blindly and naively following a dream like that, or a hope or a vision, and doing the work to complement it. You can't just sit and hope, right? You can't sit, you can't roll up your Starbucks with your buddy from, sophomore, phys class. Be like, all right, man, we are going to start the next Bitcoin. We're going to plug this algorithm in, and then what all going to do is sit back and watch. Doesn't work that way. Okay. Not for training. You got to work it. So find your belief system and then work it, either, again, to confirm or deny what you believe. And that's one of the biggest things you can do for this coming year, is to change your belief system, right? The negative thoughts, challenge if they really are true, and then why you have them, maybe do it after Christmas, because let's be honest, a lot of this is our parents' fault. And so, well, my coach said that I should go back and really kind of work through my belief system. And I kind of figured out that the reason I don't think I'm good at sports is because you told me I should quit playing soccer because I wasn't any good back when I was 8. Okay, just keep Christmas. We don't need those awkward family conversations. Definitely don't blame it on me. But it's one of those things, explore it. As always, we love you guys. We appreciate you. Even if you rock a turtleneck, we love you. Go to our website, C26Triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community, and all the information you need to be a part of our, frankly, not a part of just our team, but a part of our community. In 2023, we've got a bunch of options ranging from camp opportunities to custom coaching, one-on-one stuff, to training plans. It's all there. And another opportunity, part of the community and support is gear. We had a lot of questions on the Facebook page. Can you buy gear if you're not a C26 athlete? 100%. Like, it's one of those, it's a fascinating conversation. And you and I both have with incoming athletes, right? Hey, I want you guys to coach me, but I'm also part of Team Zoot or Team, Push Global or whatever it is. Am I okay to wear their kit, or do I have to wear yours? We don't give a fuck. Like, I don't care if you wear overalls to race in. Don't care. All we care is that you're, you might get heavy on the chamois cream, but all we care about is that you're happy and healthy and you're loving what you do. We don't care what you wear. And at the same time, that goes for, if you support the podcast and you can relate to the community of the Crushing Iron podcast and C26 and what it stands for and what it believes to you, then by all means, buy a hat, buy some gear. It's a great way to not just support the team, but support the podcast and what Mike and I have done the last 6 years. So by all means, shop away and represent it proudly. It's something that we love saying. We'll never come up to somebody like, hey, are you an athlete? You're not supposed to wear that. It's a great way to see something like, hey, because you connect. Right? Because let's be honest, if you listen to our podcast, you're a special breed. And so we can more than likely have a really awesome conversation. So click on the gear tab as well in the shop, whatever, how it's titled, and buy some stuff for Christmas. Buy yourself something. You got anything else to add to that, Mike?
I thought that was beautiful, man. I think, I don't know if I can't remember if you mentioned training plans, but that's also on the store.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. I mentioned that's on there too.
I think that's great. Yeah. We're inclusive.
Yeah, always inclusive, not exclusive. And as always, if you need anything from Mike, he's available, CrushingIron@gmail.com. If you need anything from me specifically, C26Coach@gmail.com.
All right, my man. I will catch up with you later.
See you Thursday.
See ya.